Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Sup?
And former ABC News staffers are turning on Bob Iger. They're calling for him to release a statement on journalistic integrity or
Right,
something.
because he's supposed to, now that he's put Jimmy Kimmel live on the air for free speech, he needs to stand up for journalist free speech. And I'm like, wait a minute. Journalists are supposed to report the news, not use it for free speech for opinions, masquerading as news.
Well, they haven't done that in a long time, right?
I know.
So,
it's ABC. I wouldn't refer to them as, news anyway, but that's my opinion.
so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Disney potentially getting themselves into a lawsuit over the Jimmy Kimmel thing. Again, Jimmy Kimmel, all the dumb shit the hill to die on, it's Jimmy Kimmel.
Investors are mad that, like, it might have cost us money. Meanwhile, same investors said nothing when everybody boycotted Disney Plus over the firing of Gina Carano and the fact that that cost them money, that cost them subscribers. They didn't say shit, but now it's Jimmy Kimmel. They want documentation and proof because, again, double standards. If these people didn't have double standards, they'd have no standards at all.
Yeah, right. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Sinclair apparently is gonna air Jimmy Kimmel now, and they're caving. I think it was
caving. They said they were having meaningful discussions. Whatever that means.
Meaningful discussions. I don't know. I like this whole thing is just crazy. Again, over Jimmy Kimmel, who had declining ratings for years, right? And I mean, it is what it is, right? But this, I just can't believe this is the line in the sand. This doofus is not, like, love him or hate him. I don't care if you like Jimmy Kimmel, whatever. But I'm like, this is a bridge too far. You took Jimmy Kimmel. Now we're going to go to war.
It's what it comes down to is a bunch of people are assuming that, because, they did it because the FCC and Trump, which is funny to me. And I'll explain that later. But it's okay when their side does it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that because this is a bigger conversation. I guess we'll discuss if you're accusing the government of putting soft pressure on a company to censor people, it's more of an affront to free speech, I think, to have the Biden administration call up Google and YouTube and tell them to yank a bunch of individuals' accounts. Mm-hmm. But whatever.
But don't touch Jimmy Kimmel.
But don't touch Jimmy Kimmel.
No one else was prior either.
All right. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. You'll get woohoo if you do.
Woohoo!
Go out to news.clownfishtv.com. It's news.clownfishtv.com. Sign up for our newsletter. You will get notified when we post new videos, new podcast episodes. Check it out, news.clownfishtv.com. Not exactly a bastion of journalistic integrity, but we try. It's mostly opinions.
Yeah, but there's a difference between us as a commentary channel and somebody as a mainstream news outlet, which is what we're going to talk about. So, what happened? 100+ I think they said former ABC staffers, employees, wrote a letter to Bob Iger demanding that he do something about journalists and their speech because of the whole free speech thing with Jimmy Kimmel. So, of course, if you give an inch, they're going to want to take a mile, and that's exactly what happened.
So, let's rewind the clock a little bit. Remember last time Disney caved to what their employees wanted, their activist employees wanted, and it cost them Reedy Creek.
Mm-hmm. But they're going to argue that was political backlash too. And it's like, again, I don't believe the government should be involved in silencing anyone at all. I don't think Jimmy Kimmel should have been pulled off the air for what he said, which I've said since day one. Doesn't mean he shouldn't apologize for what he said. And saying, I'm sorry, you thought I said what I said doesn't count as an apology.
Yeah.
If one government, one president in their administration can do to Google what they did and to everybody else, then that shouldn't be any more acceptable than what they're claiming Trump did, which I also think is funny because there's all these media outlets now, including Snopes, trying to say, well, if you read between the lines, basically what they said was that they put pressure on them. But, YouTube didn't have to do it, so it's YouTube's fault. To that, I'd say, you're all saying the FCC put pressure on Sinclair and Nexstar, which they said didn't happen.
Right.
And Disney, which is why they had to take Jimmy Kimmel off the air. But then it's their fault because they could have said no, right? Because that's what you just said about Google. It's their fault because they could have said no. when
They
the
could have said
presidential
no, yeah.
administration is probably threatening or whatever, putting pressure. So by their argument, try to blame the FCC and Trump. Isn't it Disney's fault? Because Disney could have said no.
They could have said no. Yeah.
I mean, by your own argument.
Actually, my understanding of the situation is that Jimmy Kimmel was being a defiant employee. They wanted to save their relationship with their local broadcasters and their advertisers, and he refused to apologize. And they're like, well, we can't air your show if you're going to make things worse.
Well, not only did he refuse to apologize, but he did that apology that wasn't an apology, that went right back to doing the same thing all over again.
I know,
like right away, they started slamming the FCC and Trump. And if you take Trump out of his skit, he has nothing. And that's what right back to doing. And it's like, well, you've learned nothing. But again, if they're trying to argue, these people, the proponents of free speech and Kimmel, quote unquote, are trying to argue that no presidential administration should be able to threaten, shows, and they were being threatened, so they had to do it because they were being threatened. But the same people are saying that Google was threatened, but they could have said no. Then Disney could have said no too.
Yes,
you were going to use your own arguments against you. But back to the thing about the ABC. So they wrote this letter. I'll let you read it.
All right.
Because the screen's always small for me.
All right. Here's a letter. A message to Bob Iger, CEO of the Walt Disney Company, as former ABC News employees who probably have an axe to grind, many of whom are also Disney shareholders.
We are too. So are a lot of people.
We care deeply about the Walt Disney Company, about ABC News, and most critically about protecting a free press. We want to acknowledge and commend your decision to reinstate Jimmy Kimmel's show. It was the right call and an important statement that political intimidation should not dictate ABC's programming. See also YouTube. This action reflects the values that have long defined the Walt Disney Company. Yet it must be just the first step in a concerted effort to defend free speech and press freedom against political intimidation.
Wait, where's the press freedom? Where's the press freedom that's been challenged? What press freedom?
The $16 million settlement with Donald Trump.
That's because Disney settled because they knew they were going to lose.
Stephanopoulos kept referring to him as a grapist. He was not a convicted grapist. And
I think he was probably told not to say, but if I remember right, and I don't quote me on this, I think they said that he was already told not to say that, and he did it anyway.
Yes. You can't go calling people grapists if they're not, right? I mean, regardless, you can hate their guts.
You can think that they're grapists.
You can think they probably are, but if they're not actually convicted, like you can't call somebody like, oh, this guy's a murderer. It's like, well, do you know for sure? Was he convicted? Well, no, I just think he was. It was obvious he was.
But there's a difference between a person like, a commentary channel or a general citizen having an opinion about something and the mainstream news outlets reporting something, because when they're reporting it, it's going to be looked at as fact. They are different standards. So when you see this freedom of speech is not the same thing as, journalism, freedom of press. There are different standards.
When you have an FCC license, you have certain standards you have to adhere to. And if you're not doing that, they can revoke your license. They totally could take you off the air. It's not the same as a podcast. Like if he was doing a podcast, it was just him, his opinions. That's a totally different thing, right?
I mean, Jimmy Kimmel has a bigger pass because he's a commentary channel, like a commentary comedian show, as opposed to someone who's considered a news network, news outlet.
Yeah, well, it's kind of weird though, because The View, it's commentary too, but it's actually produced by ABC News.
And they've also been held though because they've been called out on air and had to read corrections.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So, that combined with the absence of a strong public defense of ABC News journalists under attack has emboldened administration efforts to intimidate the press. The continued political pressure from the president and others in his administration undermines both the journalistic integrity of ABC News.
Integrity with ABC is funny.
And the First Amendment rights you have long defended.
Wait, First Amendment rights. You have the freedom of speech, but it doesn't mean you get to put your opinion out there as news.
Well, again, there's a difference between a commentary channel and a streamer and a blogger and a news outlet with an FCC license.
And they should have no administration intimidate the press. See also that Biden's administration forced different social media companies and Google to silence people who they thought didn't have the right opinion.
Speaking of which, Disney themselves have participated in attempts to silence the media on multiple occasions. In fact, they were involved in, if not responsible for, a couple instances of the adpocalypse. They were also involved in, if not responsible for, the removal of the downvote button because of the Kathleen Kennedy video getting downvoted to oblivion, and they didn't want people to see how their trailers were getting downvoted.
See, freedom of speech only applies to the people that are on one side.
Right. And that's what's actually at issue. Like, I believe in free speech, but it has to be evenly applied, just like
That's
everything
exactly,
else.
yes. And then they go on to say, you know, as Jimmy Kimmel so eloquently put it when talking about these attempts to stifle free speech, that's not legal. That's not American. That's un-American. It's so dangerous. Yes. See also Gina Carano.
Yes. Yeah, and they tried to.
You were all fine with taking Trump off when he was president, sitting president off of Twitter.
Well, okay, so speaking of which, you know, all of this censorship and whatnot, there were left-wing watchdog groups that were set up, and they were basically policing right-wing outlets and trying to get them censored to keep, you know, opinions that ran afoul of, you know, COVID mandates or, you know, election results or any of that kind of stuff. Right?
Even the debates, weren't they like doing fact checks on everything like
They
Trump said, but they weren't really fact checking Harris?
Harris also, and that's what happened with CBS News. Harris,
and honestly, that behavior is why one of the reasons people voted the way they did.
Yeah,
because they're tired of the double standard, and this is not helping. Like, you're not helping your case here. Look, do I think Jimmy Kimmel should have been, you know, his show should have been taken down? People are getting mad at you for saying this, but I don't. Because that was an opinion. It was a shitty opinion. He should have had to apologize. But I don't think it warranted his whole show being removed. Okay? I really don't. And I said that the whole time because I don't think it was right when Gina Carano was fired and stuff for saying what she said. Like, I think it should be evenly across the board. Now, news is different because news, you are held to a higher standard. You are expected. It is your duty to report the truth. We're going to look at what the journalism integrity standards are. It is your duty to report the truth. But we've had a lot of years of journalists giving opinions as fact or sway or like, you know, twisting narrative to make it look like they want it. Like, we're not hearing a lot of these news networks cover the Google thing, are we? No, because they don't want you to know about that. It's the Trump administration.
Also with the murder on the train. That was not covered.
What the hell? Why are people defacing, you know, murals of this woman? She was a completely innocent victim the whole time. Like, I don't understand what she did wrong. People are mad about it. Why are idiots taking Tylenol to prove Trump wrong when Tylenol themselves, they don't take it when you're pregnant?
I mean, yeah,
this is Darwinism at this point.
That's kind of how I look at it. I'm like, you know what? If you want to play a stupid game, then do it. Just let people get stupid and you know, get the results that come from being willfully ignorant, from being willfully stupid.
That was because it's all TDS. Anyway,
that's what it is. Like, now all of a sudden it's like I'm gonna blow out my liver in protest of Trump. It's like,
go back up to read the rest of the things. We didn't read it all. So go ahead. You read the rest.
Disney has both the responsibility and the opportunity to lead by standing firmly against capitulation and in defense of democratic values. Your legacy includes a reputation as a staunch defender of the essential role of journalism in a healthy democracy. We urge you now to reaffirm that legacy by publicly and unequivocally defending ABC journalists against political attacks.
What political attacks?
Aggressively pushing back against government efforts to undermine the First Amendment, making clear that ABC News and Disney will not be silenced or intimidated by political pressure.
Okay, wait. Where were they undermining the First Amendment any different than Biden did?
Yeah, I know, right? Actually, I would say that's worse. If the Biden administration was telling YouTube to silence individuals, that's worse.
That is freedom of speech. That is against the First Amendment.
That's individuals. You know, we're not beholden to the FCC like ABC is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a totally different thing. The First Amendment is not negotiable, right? So again, I believe in free speech, but you have to apply the rules evenly for that to work. ABC's credibility and Disney's reputation,
neither of which exists anymore. No. So I'm sorry, in my opinion.
Depend on unwavering leadership and its defense. At this critical moment, you have the chance to set a powerful example by standing up for the principles that define both our democracy and the Walt Disney Company.
Okay, but in what way? The call to action for Bob Iger, but to stand up in what way?
Be bad Trump. They want him to get into it toe to toe with Donald Trump, and he's not going to do that. I'm going to tell you why he's not going to do that, because he needs the Trump administration to sign off on some of the stuff they want to do. In fact,
Abu Dhabi and stuff like
Abu
that.
Dhabi.
It was Trump that he went to get that through and everything.
So what is going to happen? And here's, I would not, I'm going to be honest, I would not want to be Bob Iger. I would not want to be the CEO of Disney.
But he kind of cultivated this.
He did. Yeah, he did, because he wanted to be a Democratic presidential candidate. And then when that didn't happen, apparently he like rage quit the Democrats or something. Like he's independent now. But
he's allowed to be independent. But
he's allowed to be independent. Yeah,
we do. We're just alt-right Yahtzees.
So here's the problem with this is, like, he's got a business to run, and I'm actually defending Bob Iger. I can't believe this. I don't like what he's done with the company, but he is his first and foremost priority is to turn a profit for this company. And like you said, if you give. What'd you say? If you give a mouse a crumb.
I forget what's the thing. If you give them a crumb, if the mouse gives you a crumb, they'll demand the whole cookie.
Yeah, and what'll happen is if he capitulates to this group of former ABC journalists.
And why are they all former?
Well, that's a good question. So that is going to set the tone then for going forward, that Bob Iger is going to have to do whatever the employees want. We saw what happened last time. Last time Disney caved to the whims of their employees. They lost Reedy Creek.
And half of their audience isn't far left. Well, more than half, because let's be honest, most people aren't far left, and he has to consider that too. But here's the issue. Because of what happened with people like Roseanne Barr and Gina Carano and stuff like that, in comparison to like Whoopi Goldberg, all you have to admit, getting a suspension and issuing an apology, people are already mad. So you don't get to say now, we think freedom of speech is important, but then you cheered when other people who didn't say what you wanted were fired. But there were 4 key principles of journalistic integrity. And this is important, because when you're a journalist, in quotes, when you are working for a mainstream media outlet, news outlet, people go there because, it used to be. Now I think they want confirmation bias. But they went there because they wanted to know what was going on. They wanted the truth. People wanted, and I think now more than ever, they want the truth. So there are 4 key principles. You have to seek truth and report it. Journalists should be honest and courageous in gathering and reporting information, verifying facts, and avoiding distortion. Stephanopoulos didn't do that. In fact, there's, some of the people were saying, and I can't confirm, but they were saying that he was basically told not to say things, and he did it anyway because it was about narrative and trying to paint people the way they wanted to paint it. Which comes to the next one: minimize harm. Ethical journalists treat individuals with respect and consider the potential impact on their reporting. They used to. Act independently. Journalists' primary loyalty should be to the public, not personal or external interests, requiring them to avoid conflicts of interest and resist pressure from outside sources, which they're trying to claim is the outside sources would be Trump. However, it also means you're supposed to report the truth, not report your opinion as the truth. Okay? And be accountable and transparent. Journalists should take responsibility for their work, explain their ethical choices, ethical being key, and correct errors and address unethical conduct in the industry. But you guys just want to hear what you want to hear. And there's so many, and I'm going to say it's on both sides, but it's definitely far, far worse on the left that I've seen, is you have a bunch of talking heads who just want to run with narrative and not news. And it's okay when it's like a show like ours or Jimmy Kimmel, like a late night show where it's a commentary show. Even The View, I would argue, is a commentary show, because you're not saying that you are a news authority. When you're saying you are the news authority and you're calling yourself ABC fucking news, I added the fucking just FYI. If you're calling yourself that, the people are there. Yeah, ABFC. They're there because they want the news. They don't want your opinion. They don't want, and like not covering things like what happened with Google, like a lot of news outlets are not, I don't know if ABC is, but a lot of them aren't covering it because it looks really bad when you're screaming about Trump and it turns out Biden did the same thing. But you're not covering it because you want to control a narrative. So you're not doing your due diligence. You're not doing you're not being fair and even, and you're not being, you're lacking integrity.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's, look, the news is no longer the news. Basically, we're at a place right now, and it is kind of scary. People don't want the news. They want confirmation bias. And we've got 2 truths. Like everybody talks about, as soon as we start going down this rabbit hole of my truth. It's my personal
Oh, when
truth.
they say my truth, I just want to slap them. It's like, just your truth doesn't mean it's the truth.
Then you start looking for things in the news cycle that confirms your bias, and everybody does it. I do it. Everybody, every single person does it.
Not to do it. Like, I've been trying, making concerted effort. And some people get mad at me when I say, well, I don't think this is right, or I think what Trump did this, I don't agree, or, this case, I don't think, he should have been fired. They get mad. But the thing is, I'm trying to look at it as in the middle, and like, this is where, I think it's gone too far. It hasn't gone far enough. And if you're going to apply things evenly, and if you're mad about this, then you can't be mad about that. And that's where I'm trying to make a more concerted effort to do that.
Yeah. But it's hard because you piss people off. And
yeah, you do, but
you talk about Jimmy Kimmel, and you talk about, like he doubled down on the Trump and MAGA outrage right after, his non-apology. And the reason he did that is that's his audience. If Jimmy Kimmel came out and said, you know what, I jumped the gun, I shouldn't have, it was wrong, I shouldn't have done that, and we're gonna, on behalf of the station, we're gonna apologize, we had it wrong, here's what's actually going on. It turns out the shooter had ties to Antifa and was left-wing and all
they said they said that a study found that was not true.
Oh, they said a study found that was not true?
No, they said that they investigated, that the feds investigated, and they weren't tied to Antifa.
Oh, because I'm hearing he still was. Well, there we go.
It depends on who you ask.
It depends on who you ask, right? I mean,
because
again,
that's the problem.
How are you supposed to know what's true? That's the thing.
That's just it. You don't anymore because there's no journalistic integrity.
So you can go to and this is 100% true. This is true. You can go to a left-wing and a right-wing news outlet and look for stories on the same subject and have two versions of it that are complete 180s from each other, depending on what their bias is, or they will ignore certain stories altogether, like the subway, tragedy. They will ignore that because it doesn't fit the narrative. It makes
they were turning it around and saying that the guy who stabbed her was the victim for whatever reason. It's insane.
Oh, he's mentally ill and whatever.
It doesn't matter. The two things can be true at once. Somebody can be mentally ill, but they're still guilty of sin. There's two, and the girl is still a victim either way. There's multiple things can be true at once. But this whole idea of, and then they ever say what? Iger needs to stand up for journalism and for freedom of the press and freedom of speech. In what way? What way do you're saying he needs to, but you're not saying what you want him to do.
They want him
to go out, to go after Trump. But yeah,
they want him to go after Trump. But I'm like, this guy's getting ready to retire. He wants Trump to help him with the Abu Dhabi stuff. Probably wants favors from Trump. He actually made a trip to go hang out with Trump. For all his talk of F you Iger and the horse he rode in on, he was talking to Trump about the Abu Dhabi park and all this other stuff. And that's the thing. If you kowtow to your employees like that, then what is going to happen is they're going to always have demands. And they should have learned this the hard way. And I think they have. And that's why they I mean, not to be blunt, but they de-gayed a lot of the Pixar movies because they're like, we tried it your way. We failed at the box office.
They capitulated to Hollywood and these cancel people, and their stock's still the same. It hasn't gone back up.
That is true. That is numbers. Numbers don't lie.
So, I mean, and maybe here's an idea. Maybe you should just give your customers what they want, which is like the truth. Or like, but do they want that?
Do they want the truth? That's the thing.
If you're watching ABC News, you probably don't.
Well, okay, so here's the thing too. And there's another story. It's probably not worth a whole video on it, but it turns out that apparently at 30 Rock, they're freaking out about MSNBC being cut loose from NBC News because they don't think they're going to be able to make it on their own. I think Disney's best bet would be to cut ABC News loose.
Yeah, well, I think Iger was clinging to it because he came from ABC, so it was like his baby. But investors have been wanting him to cut ABC off for a while now.
I think they need to, because if Disney, I guess my take on this, again, I'm not the boss of Disney, but if I were, I'd be like, we are an entertainment company. The fact that we are getting into hard news muddies the waters. And if we're claiming to be apolitical, it's going to be really hard to be apolitical when we have opinionated, news commentators.
They say this, but at the same time, remember Iger reportedly showed up at one of their news press meetings and was trying to demand what they write about.
Yeah.
Allegedly, according to the sources inside the room. So, he does. You can't control the news if you don't control the news. If you know what I'm saying.
Right. Right.
But yeah, so now the investors, one group of investors,
one group of investors, yeah,
are mad, and they want all the documentation revealed to them about why they decided to suspend Jimmy Kimmel, because they probably lost money. I'm like, but again, when Gina Carano was fired and people were mad and canceling their Disney Plus subscriptions and other things, you didn't say anything then. You didn't ask for internal documentation then.
No, okay, so there's a little bit of bias here too, because look who's asking. A teachers union and Reporters Without Borders.
Yes.
They want documentation. Yes.
So they're making it out like all the investors are asking. No, it's just a couple of people,
a handful,
in groups inside of the thing that's going on. And they're demanding to know, because they could have lost money. And it's like,
yeah,
you might have, you might not have. We don't know.
And again, to talk about bias, if it were a group of like right wingers or something like that, like church group, I don't know if the church groups do stock things, but they had like a bunch of nuns, I guess. One point they had like nuns were shareholders asking questions about why Disney is doing this or why they're doing that. And the media mock them. But now it's like, oh, these teachers are really upset. I'm like, oh, for God's sake. So this is what they said. They said there's a credible basis to suspect that the Disney board and executives may have breached their fiduciary duties of loyalty, care, and good faith by placing improper political or affiliate considerations above the best interests of the company and its stockholders.
But they don't care when there's improper political considerations that were on the left that could have cost the company money, like the Don't Say Gay that cost them Reedy Creek.
Yeah, that was a huge loss for Disney. And again,
shareholders questioned that too, and everybody made fun of the shareholders for questioning it.
And again, the media never gave any weight to the right boycotting Disney for a variety of reasons too. Like they made a big deal, like, oh my God, the left's all going to cancel Disney Plus, guys. Show everybody. Like when the right got upset about Gina Carano and the right got upset about all these other dumb decisions Disney was making, Splash Mountain, whatever.
MAGA
Karens,
MAGA,
Yahtzees, yeah, the Cracker Barrel crew or whatever the hell they were making fun of right wingers for voicing their opinions through withholding their spending, but then again,
of course, again, journalistic integrity.
Exactly. Either people are boycotting and you report on it, or they're not. But in this case, they agreed with the Jimmy Kimmel situation. So they were like, oh, look at all these people boycotting Hollywood. So mad, guys. Oh, everybody's mad at Bob Iger. Guys, show Bob
Iger loves Hollywood. They suck his dick and he loves it. And they have for years. And now they're mad at him. He's going to cave. Because he remember, his biggest fear was that he wouldn't go to a restaurant and get good seating because he wouldn't be important anymore.
For fuck's sake. I don't think Walt really cared about that. He started his own club.
Oh, he clearly didn't. He was just
Given the political climate, I think it's important to point out again that Walt Disney hated communists, and he actually testified against communists and socialists in his own company. So I'm just saying, like, if you want to talk about, well, Disney has a right to be, to speak up again. Oh yeah, Walt was like, yeah, I hate commies. Get them out of my company. But they don't mention that. They never bring that up.
But only when it's in a negative way, like he was anti-Semitic before. Now it's apparently cool to be anti-Semitic according to these idiots in Hollywood.
Now he gets an animatronic that looks like Tom Hanks.
The animatronic looks terrible, but it's just the double standards. Again, if they didn't have double standards, they'd have no standards at all. But now these former employees are demanding that they stand up for journalistic and journalistic freedom, speech, freedom of press, and it's like. They're not the same thing.
I think that for the good of the company, even if it's not Bob Iger, whoever is after Bob Iger, I think they need to get out of the news cycle, because I think they're going to find themselves in this situation time and time and time again. Do you really want to have have to be dealing with Sunny Hostin when you just want to pimp a princess movie, right? Like, or the dumb shit that your actors are saying, and then they're saying stuff on your news programs, and I'd be like, what, the news, it's a pain in the ass. Let's just go back to making entertainment. Let somebody else cover the news, and it doesn't make money. It actually costs us money. It's anti-money. I don't think Walt would have been
anti-money.
Cool.
Hell no.
No, he would. I don't think he would have been like, yeah, let's go all in on this shit and open ourselves up to all kinds of litigation. And I'd just be like, having a news outlet and having to play by all these rules, it's gonna take our focus off of making entertainment, and that would be my take. But whatever, I'm not in charge. We're gonna wrap it up.
Yes.
All right, so please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.
Bye.
For more pop culture news, views, and rants, go to news.clownfishtv.com. That's news.clownfishtv.com.